him, but the people gnashed their teeth at him. You follow me? So, you know, it swings back and forth on those issues. You could write a long paper on that subject, on the swinging back and forth between these various opponents and supporters and how they keep shifting shapes, if you want to call it. I don't have time to do that, but I call your attention to it because I have to hurry. And okay, so Caiaphas is the high priest at that time, according to Matthew, line 3. These ideas, tumults, line 5, as Josephus says in the Antiquities. In the reign of Pontius Pilate, I think he says there were 5 tumults. That's the language he uses. Mark also uses the tumult language in line 9. But he leaves out the Jesus tumult somehow. Although he does actually include it in the Antiquities, in the war he leaves it out. You should look at the tumults. Again, Robert Eisler is very good for that sort of thing. I mean, he goes through all that stuff in great detail beside Jesus and John the Baptist. Anyway, one of the 12, Judas Iscariot, 14, sought an opportunity to deliver him up. Luke adds, they were to give him money. Other Gospels talk about he was a thief. So poor Judas Iscariot gets really pulverized in these documents from now on, and to some extent implied previously. And of course, this is the Last Supper, very, very important. Now, again, we know the new gospel was found in the name of Judas Iscariot, which is considered to be a Gnostic gospel, probably found in the Nag Hammadi areas. You say, what's Nag Hammadi? That's it's like Qumran's the place where they found these books that probably were hidden away because they became banned by the church. They're called Gnostic because they have an idea of gnosis. Gnosis is the Greek idea that was developed by the Neoplatonists as supernatural knowledge, wisdom. You gain enlightenment. John, the Gospel of John, seems to have that whole introduction of that kind of thinking. Again, none of it is Palestinian. None of it is Palestinian. But finding the Gospel of Judas just shows people were using these scenarios to propagate their own ideas through literature, which is normal. Hollywood scriptwriters do it all the time. Give me the plot, I'll write a different scenario. Okay, I'll write a scenario myself. Okay, I'll write one. And that's what I mean. These things are bouncing back and forth in my mind in the 2nd and 3rd centuries. And you say, well, when were the Gospels finally written? I don't know when the final shape of the Gospels were. You know, I think an early version of Mark was found of John was found in the one monastery in Sinai, which I think it's called Sinaiticus, but that isn't until the early 100s anyway, like 120 or something like that. I don't know if there's any earlier gospel materials than that. And Justin Martyr, who's someone living in the 2nd century, he knows a work called the Memoirs of the Apostles he speaks about, but he doesn't know 4 individual gospels. He just knows a work called the Memoirs of the Apostles. And you could go through Justin Martyr, who was living in the mid-100s. So, and he's living in Asia Minor. So I don't know when the Gospels came to their final form, as they bounced off back and forth. Some people have theorized different things, but I have no idea. All we know is that in the 300s, under Eusebius and Constantine, the final versions were, made authoritative at the Council of Nicaea and the later council later on in the 300s. Get the date of that. I'm not a great historian of the early church, but and which ones were banned of the circulating literature. But the Gospel of Judas, which is very Neoplatonic, Judas is portrayed as heroic in that gospel. So it depends who the writer is. Mostly, yeah.
The Gospel of Judas, as opposed to for the Gnostic thing, that really wasn't an anti-Semitic bent one as much as...
No, there's no anti-Semitism in that one particular. This is, most of these are, I know it's maybe, we've repeated it too often, most of these are written by people who have a real animus. That's what I want to, maybe anti-Semitism is the wrong word, either, real animus. The Gospel of Judas is more like supernatural discussions of a Neoplatonic kind. They're not showing any particular animus that I'm aware of. I don't see a lot, but there is some, I guess, there. It depends. You have to look at it carefully. I don't want to make a final statement about that. I'd have to look at everything and see what we see there, how much animus or not. Animus means a negative feeling towards it. Okay, so for Luke, Satan enters Judas, by the way, who was called Iscariot. I have to see. I don't have my Greek in front of me. I don't want to run and find it. Does the? Oh, well, I might as well look. What is it? Luke 22:3. Luke 22:3. You always have to have the Greek next to you, just so you can make sure that the translation is. I mean, the translation I'm reading here is not really necessarily authoritative. Yeah, who his surname is Iscariot. It doesn't say the Iscariot, but I think John says at one point the Iscariot. Luke just said it was surnamed Iscariot, so that's not a the there. So what's the difference? Well, the Iscariot would more like the Zealot, the Sicarii, and so on and so forth. Anyway. So now let's see. They want to find him without the multitude, Luke says in 22:5-6. Yeah, because he's a popular leader. And you've got to picture what a popular leader would look like in these times in Palestine. Who's the guy that helped the U.S. government go into Iraq? What's his name? Shalaby? But he think he's a popular leader in Iraq among any party? No, of course not. And they have to drive him around with a bodyguard like 10,000 people wherever he goes. That's more like Palestine. It's a period I hate to be too vivid about it, you guys. Anyway, you have to evaluate everything from your own perspective. So this is famous. Finding the place for the Last Supper, a very colorful woman bearing a pitcher and so on and so forth again. But he does say there's